Coming up in this episode,
I really, really like it. I've always liked it as a movie. I loved it when it came out.
Johnny Cash nearly wiped out a species of bird,
Superb fact.
destroying critical habitat for the California condor.
Hello, man, Betsy Purvis.
Ray bloody Cash.
Believe me, it's hard to rip a sink out of a wall. Because I've tried to do that on a stag do in Vilnius, and believe me,
The story's coming out now.
doesn't come off the wall that easily.
Welcome back to the Historical Movies Podcast. In today's episode, it's Walk the Line. My name's Ross, I'm an editor, and I'm joined as ever by my brother Bryce, Professor of Modern History at Liverpool Hope University, and we're still sitting in his kitchen in Liverpool, together in the same room again, to discuss Walk the Line, this fantastic Johnny Cash biopic. Bryce, how are you doing?
You're a mad fan.
Good, great. We watched this film together earlier, and I thought, finally, a musical where I actually like the music that's in it. I've sat through a lot of musicals in my time, not really my thing. And
Well, it's not really a musical per se.
Well, it's not a musical, although I think they made it into a musical, but I'm a big fan of Johnny Cash's music. I like to play his songs. My voice isn't quite deep enough to meet his rich, low voice. For me, it just works brilliantly as a movie because it's music I love. And I was delighted to find out that Joaquin Phoenix and Reese Witherspoon, whose name I always get confused with the British pub chain in this country. Wetherspoons, yeah. Sing and play their own instruments. And it was something that your friend and mine, Roger Ebert, legendary American critic, who gave this film 4 out of 4 stars, said that when he watched this movie, he couldn't believe that it was Joaquin Phoenix singing. He thought it was the Johnny Cash, original stuff. And I certainly felt that, particularly in the later songs in this movie. I think he does Joaquin Phoenix does a brilliant job in this movie of portraying Johnny Cash. And Joaquin Phoenix, who we've talked about before in Napoleon, who I think by no fault of his own had a mixed time on Napoleon. I think he wasn't given much help by not particularly interested director, so Ridley Scott by the sound of it. But in this movie, he's really, he's doing some good work, doing what he can do.
Yeah, it's remarkable that the two of them there, Reese Witherspoons and old Joaquin, do their own singing, playing, and southern accents.
Yeah,
and it's very good.
Yeah,
to my ears anyway, it's very believable. Obviously, not from the southern United States, it was very believable.
Yeah,
both of them, I think, have really good voices and fairly talented musicians.
Yeah, I think they do a great job, and I think this movie does a great job with portraying addiction, fame, and redemption. I suppose those are the kind of the key principles of this movie. And one scene in particular, when I was watching this, struck me. That's when he's trying to get the tractor out. He's bought this land, and his dad, Robert, who's played by I love Robert Patrick. His dad is the T-1000. His dad's the Terminator. Well, so no wonder he's intimidated by him.
I think I raised the issue there. I hate to be a pedant, but the accuracy, again, we've discussed this many times of Joaquin Phoenix playing Napoleon as much as a man of 50 or whatever. Now, Robert Patrick is 16 years older than Joaquin Phoenix. So for me, that casting doesn't quite work as much as I regard Patrick as an actor.
Yeah,
he's cast as the dad and he's only 16 years older, and I think it kind of shows because Joaquin Phoenix has quite a sort of mature or quite lived in face, as did Johnny Cash, whereas I think Robert Patrick is quite for his age looks quite youthful.
Do you think so?
And I can't quite believe, and I think it's a bit of miscasting in a way, because he's only currently Joaquin Phoenix is 50, Robert Patrick is 66. I don't know how old they were on this, but for me, it's almost unbelievable that he's his dad. I think they look almost the same age.
Really? Because I always thought Robert Patrick, just going off on a slight tangent here, but he always looked pretty haggard to me. I think he enjoyed his life in the 90s after he had such fame with Terminator 2. It always struck me like that.
I don't know. I think he's got quite big ears and quite clean shaven. I think I always think looks quite youthful.
Well, James Cameron always said he looked like a cat, which is why he cast him in Terminator 2.
Like a cat?
Yeah, he said he looks like a cat, like he's got the sharp face of a cat. Anyway, let's get back to my point, which was about addiction, fame, and redemption. When Johnny Cash falls off his tractor that he's bought in this movie backwards, he actually goes into the water and he's fully submerged, and it's like a baptism scene.
You pointed that, and I thought that was very perceptive because we're obviously in our southern Baptist context.
And then he comes out of the water, and that's the moment in this film, which must be about 75% of the way in. That's when he reaches the redemption. And of course, that's kind of fitting because I know Johnny Cash and June Carter Cash was influential in converting him to the God Squad, wasn't he, basically? And seeing the religious way and that kind of thing really helped him with his journey away from drugs and stuff. And that scene, I thought, okay, that's quite an obvious analogy that he's being like baptized and started anew.
He's reborn.
Yeah. And then there's this wonderful scene later where June Carter's parents, Chuck, the drug dealer guys comes to try and give Johnny Cash his drugs, and her parents.
Drugs. He's just a humble dealer. He's just trying to make a buck, isn't he? Sorry,
pedant's corner again there.
Sorry to sabotage you. No, but yeah, it's gone.
But my point was that the dad gets a shotgun out, doesn't he? I thought, whoa, okay, there we go. And if there's a shot later, and her mum has got a shotgun. June Carter's mum has also got a shotgun. He's like, don't you ever come back here.
They make him tough down in, where is this, in Tennessee? Are we in Tennessee?
Yeah, I think it's shot mainly in Tennessee as well. So this was nominated for 5 Oscars as well, which I can, well understand. And only won one, and that's for Reese Witherspoon.
Can I just come in there where, like, a guy who we often, I've got to apologise to Peter Bradshaw of The Guardian, because he's often the whipping boy of this podcast for his tendency towards hyperbole. However, I was reading his Guardian review of this, and he actually predicted that the only Oscar would be won by Reese Witherspoon. She would win the Oscar for this.
Predicted that?
He predicted that, yeah, in his review before. I was actually recently reading his Oscars prediction, which he got almost completely wrong for this year.
Is he still alive? Is he still going?
Of course he is, yeah.
Yeah, must be. He's not that old, is he?
He's getting on, I'd say, but I mean, I've got to give him his due. He predicted that Witherspoons would win the Oscar, and she did. Yeah,
well, I brought this up before, listeners. This is the same Oscar year, the 2006 Oscars, and I'm sorry to bring this up again. That's the year that the film Hustle and Flow, with the song by 3 6 Mafia, Hard Out Here for a Pimp, won an Oscar. And we're talking about a film, I know it's a best original music, so maybe it doesn't apply to a film with old music.
It's a bloody good song, to be fair.
Time for a very short interruption. It's Ross here. Thanks very much for listening on YouTube. Don't forget to check out all of our other episodes, and we'd love to hear from you, so leave us a comment. And any sharing or liking or subscribing you can do would really help the podcast. So thanks a lot. Anyway, this movie does, I think, a pretty good job. It looks like it's a fairly accurate portrayal of the relationship between Cash and Carter, and like his early years growing up, Johnny Cash. The upbringing is fairly true. The death of his brother, which was not only a big influence on Johnny Cash, but also Johnny Cash, who gave Joaquin Phoenix the nod to play him in this movie. Of course, Joaquin Phoenix lost his brother when he was young. Yeah. Which apparently was part of the reason why he thought he could sort of relate to that. The stuff like with the drug addiction, relationship with June, and the Folsom prison performance, that stuff's all pretty accurate. Obviously, there's some. I think basically then there's artistic license. A lot of the stuff is compressed in terms of timeline. Yeah. I think the only thing that this has been called up upon, and it's not really something I suppose you can change. I don't know. I get your opinion on it. Was that his first wife, Vivian, to whom he was married for over a decade, is not. She's just like the grumpy stay-at-home wife who's always ruining his fun. And she wasn't very happy, and the kids that Johnny Cash, I think they had 3 kids together, also weren't happy with her portrayal in this movie.
She's sort of portrayed as the ball and chain.
Yeah, but it's also portrayed in this movie that it's inevitable that Cash will move on to Carter, and that wasn't the point that they're saying. Is that's not the case. It was he was out being a top shagger basically, and abusing drugs, and she couldn't really put up with that, which is fair enough. Especially when raising young children.
Yeah, so, I suppose I hadn't actually thought about that, but I suppose this famous scene where he's banging on June's door and he's saying it's something along the lines of this ain't wrong, and it doesn't really provide any critical commentary on it. It is wrong.
Yeah,
but it doesn't. I suppose it lets off the hook there. I do think as well it's very much we're in the Hollywood South, or the Hollywood Deep South, and what's the main theme of Hollywood's Deep South?
Hot.
It's hot, exactly.
Clammy.
It's roadside dust.
Sweaty
and lots
armpits.
Lots of sweating. Yeah. And this is a very sweaty movie.
It is. I was thinking, what are the sweatiest movies ever made? This is
obviously he's going like cold turkey and stuff, and he's sweating out the drugs, isn't he? As well, that's as well as the Hollywood South sweat. Like it's a sweaty piece.
I was thinking of, as I like to do, because we'll never get to do this movie on this podcast, although it's one of my favourite films, because it's not a historical Crimson Tide, the submarine movie, where there's so much sweat in that movie. It's a wonder that the submarine doesn't succumb to humidity.
Well, I have spoken to submariners who've told me that everyone's quite smelly.
Yeah.
But obviously I don't know how smelly they are, but sweaty, Hollywood sweaty. We've done the Mississippi burning.
Yeah.
Or the southern United States. The theme is it's hot,
clammy,
sweaty, dusty, roadside dust and sweat.
Yeah. So there's also some other things like the proposing on stage didn't quite happen as it did. Although I've read somewhere that he did actually propose to her on stage. It wasn't as dramatic. And also, like it wasn't just June Carter who helped him get clean. He obviously got professional help and stuff. But that's not really, what's your view then as a screenwriter? That stuff's been compressed, basically. I've got absolutely no problem with that historically.
No, I think you have to take liberties like that, unfortunately. In I mean, how long is this thing? About 2 hours?
Two and a half, I think.
Yeah, look, you've got to do that.
We don't need a scene where he checks into the Betty Ford clinic, do we? That's not necessary in this movie.
That's probably my, as we kind of preempt like favourite scenes. I think I really like that scene where he very, unfairly to her pressures her to marry him in front of a crowd of thousands of people.
The man in blackmail, as I like to call that scene at the end.
The man in blackmail.
Yes.
Yeah, very good.
We'll come on to that later. I wanted to get your opinion on this, Bryce, because this is a great fact about Johnny Cash's early life.
Go on.
And I want to ask you, how would you put this into the movie? Okay, Johnny Cash nearly wiped out a species of bird. Do you know this? Have you heard this?
No.
In 1965, his truck caught fire in California's Los Padres National Forest. The fire spread and burned around 508 acres, destroying critical habitat for the California condor. It killed 49 of the rare condors. And he got in trouble. And then when he was questioned, he reportedly said, "I didn't do it, my truck did." He was fined 82 grand in 1965. That's a lot of money. So he almost wiped out, very almost wiped out the California condor. It survived thanks to conservation efforts, but it was seriously a major environmental incident.
Is that what that is? You mentioning that there, which is a superb fact. So I doff my cap to you. I didn't know that. Does that explain that moment in the movie where he's in his pool and he says, girls, come here and look at this, and it's a... Yeah, but is it a condor in the sky?
No,
it's a falcon. Is it a falcon?
It should be, shouldn't it? He says it's a falcon. Yeah, I think it's a falcon. That's a good point.
Should be a condor.
Put that in as an Easter egg. Yeah. Oh, look, girls! It's a California condor.
What I almost wiped out
with my truck fire.
Yeah, what me with my truck.
He was also killed by an ostrich headbutt in 1980, but that's a bit later. So
which one he was killed?
He was almost killed.
Oh, almost. I thought you said he was also killed.
No, almost. He's apparently his belt buckle saved him.
An ostrich headbutted him?
Yeah, because he used to keep like exotic animals on his estate or whatever.
Yeah. And
a particularly aggressive ostrich headbutted him in 1980 and he almost died. But that's obviously, those are the two classic facts when, Johnny Cash...
Rock and roll.
Yeah, rock. There's a lot of quite poignant moments in this movie. Obviously, there's that montage you get in the middle of the movie, which is great. The when he's singing "Walk the Line," and I'm delighted to see crossfades. Then people don't use crossfades in the movie editing anymore because they look shit. But this movie has it. You've got like June coming up in crossfade to him like having a sweaty nightmare, and then June sort of faded in. But I think what they've done really well, I think, in this movie is then pick the right Cash songs to go along with that. My only criticism would be is when June Carter says in one of the first duets they do, and she doesn't want to sing the song because she sung it with her husband.
Former husband, yeah.
Yeah. And she says, "Let's do your song Big River," which is one of my favourite Johnny Cash songs. And I thought, great, we're going to get Big River. Doesn't happen. Anyway, just wanted to put that point in before we get on to our questions.
Neither do we get Boy Named Sue. Isn't that one of your other
favorite? I forgot about that one.
It's one of your favourite Cash songs, isn't it?
Yeah, another great song. Well, there's just so many of them. Anyway, so trivial trivia, Bryce.
Go ahead.
This film has its origins in a 1993 episode of Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman. I don't know what that means. There's a classic bit of trivia where you think, well, I need more than that. You can't just tell me that. You can't just juice me up with that fact.
Did Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman...
I've no idea. I don't know.
But that was was it an 80s or a 90s medical drama?
Mm-hmm. I think it's like a poor man's Murder, She Wrote, isn't it?
But she's out down in the deep south or in some kind of outback, is she? Or...
I can't remember.
So how does that coincide with Johnny Cash? Does she meet Johnny Cash?
I have no idea. I've got absolutely no idea. This is the classic trivial trivia. It's missing out all of the interesting information. So I have no idea. I came up with an alternative film name.
Go ahead.
Snort the Line.
Very good, because there's quite a bit of that going on here.
The white powder. You've mentioned that Robert Patrick's 16 years older than Joaquin Phoenix. What do you think about the length of this? I actually think we watched the extended version, because I think the version we've seen is about 2.5 hours.
Yeah, I remember when this came out. I remember it being short. I think it was shorter.
I think it's about 2 hours.
Because I remember being it was definitely yes. I think you're right there.
I don't think it needs I find the director's cut. I don't need to have that.
No,
2.5 hours.
But I could watch it. I could watch it for longer. Actually, I could keep on watching. I think it's such a good. Well, actually, I think Joaquin Phoenix is so good as Johnny Cash. When you you see him. Usually sort of distant shots, but you like that. I mean, he's Johnny Cash was a bit shorter, I think, wasn't he?
Yeah.
But
a bit more slight, isn't he, Johnny Cash?
But you look at it, he really inhabits.
Especially when he's got those super high 50s trousers
up to tits.
and white vests.
Yeah.
He looks exactly like him. So are you going to go for Joaquin Phoenix as your favourite character?
No, that's not my favourite character, Ross. I believe when we were watching this, I specifically asked you to take a note of my favourite character.
I did take a note. Who is the lady who plays Betty Purvis?
Betsy Purvis.
Sorry, Betsy Purvis. Yeah.
They're in the stationery store. That's where June comes across him. Johnny's drug addict trying to buy a she's totally doing a
doll's house or something.
Typical male failure of trying to bamboozled by toys / things for the kid, doesn't know which one to get. There's that whole scene there, and in that scene, June Carter is recognised.
Yes,
Betsy Purvis.
Yes, hi, ma'am, Betsy Purvis.
Hello, ma'am, Betsy Purvis.
I tried to find the actor for you,
but for Betsy Purvis. Did she play herself?
She might have well done. They should have got someone.
She's a plump. How can we put it? A sort of
good Southern girl,
plump white Southern girl into her country music. I'd say God fearing and she's delighted to meet Reese Witherspoon's. June Carter. The glee on her face, the dimples, her cheeks are just. And for me, it's a stellar performance. In fact, may I add that we had our own brush with Hollywood A-list today.
Oh yeah, you've got a actually I forgot about that. We did,
and similar
in the park down the road here.
Similar thing when we came across Minnie Driver.
Yeah,
and we were both quite starstruck, weren't we?
Well, we didn't recognise who it was.
We didn't know who it was
until I said, "Is that Minnie Driver?" And we asked one of the
and I said no.
And when we asked one of the
the roadies,
they were like, "I'm not sure, mate. I don't know. Is that Minnie Driver?"
But then we established that it was.
It was Minnie Driver, yeah, and with James Nesbitt
filming. Yeah. So we've had our own brush. We've had our own Betsy Purvis moment where we've been starstruck.
Yeah, they're filming a Netflix series in the park here, aren't they? Do you want to relay what the gossip about Minnie Driver or?
Well, I think we should, because I think some of our listeners listen to us for a bit of gossip, bit of tittle tattle, bit of Hollywood gossip.
What's that magazine? TMZ or what was
TMZ,
it? TMZ, let's take them on.
Fella, yeah.
Let's get on TMZ's corner. Here we go. This is the hot gossip about
the hot gossip
Driver.
is, shall we say, she's hard work. End of.
But Nesbitt's fine.
Nesbitt sounds
great. But
he's not Hollywood, is he?
No, not properly. He kind of always was stuck to TV roles, but he did do. You mentioned he does Bloody Sunday.
was a TV movie. Because to be fair to, I think Minnie Driver's done some Hollywood numbers, Good Will Hunting, other stuff, Tarzan, Simpsons movie, like voice roles. But she's done, I think, a couple of rom-com. She's done quite a bit of Hollywood work.
Yeah.
And I think consequently she's, as we was intimated us today, she's
bit of a diva.
A little bit harder work.
Yeah. Sorry, Betsy Purvis, coming back to that. Natalie Canerday, I think. She's actually...
you think what?
I think she's the actress that plays Betsy Purvis. But it's actually quite difficult to find. I think it is... She's listed as Woman in Aisle. I think that's how she's listed. Yeah,
because she's with her husband, isn't she?
But why wouldn't... She says her name. Why wouldn't you... if you're doing the cast list, why wouldn't you write her name as Betsy Purvis?
Well, I certainly remember. I think it's a perfect name, isn't it? For a sort of
Betsy Purvis.
Southern housewife, Betsy Purvis. I've cooked a nice cherry pie for you. So she's not named in the credits as...
No, she's in the credits. She's something like Woman in Aisle. Anyway...
what's her name? Natalie
Canerday.
Natalie Canerday, we salute you.
Yeah. The Natalie Canerday pod. Joaquin Phoenix, Johnny Cash lost out the Oscar to Philip Seymour Hoffman, who played Truman Capote. But it's a brilliant performance. Or Philip C. Less Often, as people now call him.
But that's a bit harsh. It's basically taking the piss out of the fact he's died.
Yeah.
So that was for In Cold Blood, was it?
No, for in Capote.
Oh, Capote, yeah. Which was, of course, heavily based on Capote's In Cold Blood, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. But I think he gives a great physical performance.
Yes.
He does like the singing, he does the emotion stuff really well. He also does a great sort of almost lumbering physical performance. There's a few times he like hits the... There's one bit, where he goes crazy in the like backstage area and hits his head against the wall. And it looks really painful. And then he rips a sink off the wall.
Well, I have a bit of an issue with that scene, how easily the sink comes off the wall when he rips it off the wall. Like, it looks as if... I mean, believe me, it's hard to rip a sink out of a wall.
If you've got personal experience.
I actually have. I won't go into it. It's hard work.
Well, I'm gonna out trivia here, Bryce. Apparently that was not scripted.
Well, there you go.
That's a real sink that he ripped off the wall.
I'm just looking up Natalie Canerday here.
Yeah.
She's been in, no less...
I hope it's the right woman.
Tuskegee Airmen, Biloxi Blues, Shotgun Stories, and One False Move.
So she won't be appearing on the podcast.
Her most famous roles have been as protagonists' harried mothers, such as her roles in Sling Blaze and October Sky.
What a brilliant word to describe it. She's a harried mother specialist.
Yeah, I think she's very good at it.
Yeah. Flawless performance. Reese Witherspoon got a lot. Obviously, she won the Oscar nomination. I think that Ebert said she had like this kind of boundless energy and dynamism to her performance.
I think she's great.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, I think she does a great job.
I mean, I don't know if it's quite hitting the heights of Legally Blonde, but it's certainly up there for sure.
Jennifer, I think that's how you pronounce it. Spelled with a G.
Jennifer.
Ginnifer. Ginnifer. Jennifer Goodwin as Vivian Cash, so Johnny Cash's first husband.
Wife.
And we've wife. Sorry,
that would be a twist, wouldn't it? That would,
yeah. And of course, the wonderful Robert Patrick as Ray Bloody Cash. The T-1000 is your dad. So, Bryce? What was your favourite scene? Can you pick one out? I've got a list. There's some really good scenes in this movie.
I like it when he proposes to her.
Well, which time? On stage?
When she accepts.
Yeah.
I like it when he backflips off his tractor drunkenly into the ravine.
Into the drink.
I like the Betsy Purvis scene. And I like the ripping the sink out of the wall.
Yeah.
How about yourself?
Well, I've got a few. First, do you remember the bit where Witherspoon gets stuck on his guitar, but backstage when they first meet?
Mm.
How do you get stuck on a guitar? I've noticed they filmed it in close-ups, and they've got this kind of like guitar string twang noise when she detaches herself from the guitar. I didn't get it. I like this scene. Talking about physical performance, I really like the scene where he's completely wrecked on like methamphetamines or something, and addled with drugs, and he bumbles onto the stage, like insults the drummer, and
tells the drummer to play faster or something.
Yeah, and then it collapses on the floor. Like, it's really good. Seriously, like the physical stuff's great. And I love the scene. One of my favorite scenes is when he get rightly reprimanded by his wife, Vivian, for putting up framed pictures of him with June Carter on the wall in their house. How do you think you're going to get away with that?
It's a really harrowing scene, actually, isn't it? Because it leads to them sort of rolling around the kitchen, and you've got the kids crying, and yeah, it's actually a really good, horrible scene.
But at the beginning, it's ridiculous. I mean, I don't know if that's based on historical fact. Why would you be putting up if you had a mistress, would you be hammering up a framed picture of you and that mistress in your house?
I think to be fair, it's the outhouse. It's his man cave, isn't it? I mean, and I think in man cave, anything goes. Like, that's his space.
I like this. I really like the scene between him and his dad on the Thanksgiving meal, and he asks his dad, "Where were you because he was an alcoholic?" Basically, is the point he's making. I think that's really good, and the tractor scene when he's baptized, that's great, and the mum and dad fending off the drug dealer, mentioned that. And I honestly cannot get the ending. You've mentioned the ending where he says he won't sing Jackson unless June agrees to marry him live on stage. Which, to begin with, that scene's a little bit like, okay, it's a bit weird. But then it's like quite tender. It's quite, it's done, it ends quite nicely.
Yeah, it is.
But it's a bit odd to begin with.
It's got some tender moments, this.
Yeah. There's great chemistry between the two of them.
Oh, yeah.
But my favourite scene, without a shadow of a doubt, I love the band audition scene when they go in. Sam Phillips, who was the record, Sun Records, I think it was, suddenly comes up with like, Mr. Cash, if you were outside dying in the gutter and you had one song, what song would you sing? Suddenly becomes like this like profane angel of a man who like instills Johnny Cash with the self-belief, and he starts singing Folsom Prison Blues.
Yeah.
And it gets more and more confident, and it's like that scene is like a transition where we watch Joaquin Phoenix become Johnny Cash. That might have entered Sude's corner, but for me, I really thought like, oh, that's a really clever scene, because there's when you do these biopic films, there's obviously like, if you know the subject matter really well, you there's obviously like this. It was an uncanny valley that they call it. Where you're like, okay, I can't really get on board with this because it just doesn't look like Johnny Cash. But there's something about this I'm not quite there. And I think in this film they do a really clever thing of basically when he sings that song and the camera zooms in on him as he's singing it, and he's getting more and more confident as he sings it. It's a really good transition, and you really like buy into the character because you're going from like, okay, it's an actor portraying Johnny Cash, and then it's a bit like that scene. Sorry to bring up another submarine movie. In The Hunt for Red October.
Here we go, listeners.
Where it zooms into it's that Australian actor who's in Jurassic Park.
Sam Neill.
Sam Neill's mouth, and he's speaking Russian, and then it zooms back out, and he's speaking English. Do you remember that? And that's how they transition.
Which I think is terrible.
Yeah, it's shite. But in this movie, it really works, I think.
Yeah. It's look, Johnny Cash was the, he spoke to the dispossessed and the downtrodden, and you get that in this, don't you? Like, he really, he's he's at his lowest ebb occasionally. He's obviously got depression and drink and drug issues, and it's Joaquin Phoenix with his, may I say, sort of quite gothic look, especially his sort of like his eyes and sort of I've always been fascinated with the sort of dark patches around his eyes and this kind of obsidian stare. Obviously, I think is really well cast. Yeah, in that role, it's very believable. He's got a great kind of like craziness to his, like unpredictability, which works great with like the drug stuff. There's like a sort of momentum that he brings. He's always liked those kind of slightly darker roles. Even you mentioned Napoleon with the sort of these slightly darker aspects of Napoleon, not the sort of the tyranny, but the sort of the weird sex scenes. And you've got it in, another of his massive box office roles like Gladiator, where it's the sort of incesty, isn't he? And I think he inhabits those kind of slightly creepy roles really, really well. Yeah. I've got to bring up two other scenes, which I wonder if they irked you like they did me. First of all is when his brother's dying, and then we get some terrible child acting where he's going, "You hear him, JR? Can you hear the angels sing?" As he's dying. And the other one is when his dad, early on, is... because I know you mentioned on the podcast before that when they put in references so that to help you know what time period it is, and his dad... over one of the first scenes we see in the house, on the radio we hear, "Communist troops."
have been driven out of Seoul, South Korea, by General Douglas MacArthur, and then Ray Cash turns off the radio. You know. Anyway, thought I'd bring that up.
Well, can I, before I forget, and I'm going to preempt Sude's Corner here, and it's not really a Sude's Corner, but there was a review I read of this by a chap called Chris Norris in Film Comment magazine, and he writes, and I quote, "Few genres give you as much bang for your buck as the musical legend biopic, which comes with blockbuster plot points and no onus of establishing believability. Every potentially mawkish scene validated by the imprimatur of reality." I think what he's speaking to is I think trying to decode that, when he's trying to decode the jargon here, potentially mawkish scene, i.e., what was that thing? Can you see the angels, JR?
Yeah.
The mawkish meaning sort of over sentimentalized,
right,
is kind of allowed in this genre because it's a real story. If you see what I mean, it's the realism. I think it's what he's getting at here. The genre of the musical legend biopic,
I see,
is essentially a realistic, in inverted commas with a capital R, portrayal, and so thereby you can get away perhaps with some of this sort of mawkishly sentimental bits
because it works within the genre.
Because it works in the genre,
okay.
And I think that's what he's very clumsily trying to say there. And if I've got it right, I think it's actually quite a good point. If you see what I mean.
If he is, but yeah, that's good. That's a good point. Which parts should Mel Gibson, Daniel Day-Lewis, or Marlon Brando have played?
Well, this is quite.
Mel's never done a musical. Sorry, it's not a musical, but you know what I mean.
A musical legend, biopic, and this is quite an interesting one because. If you think about those musical legends, this came out in the same year as Ray.
I think Ray's 1 year before.
Or it was 1 year before. Jamie Foxx's Ray Charles. Think about other things of this genre, like the new Dylan movie that's coming out, the Sam Mendes Beatles thing that's coming out soon.
Yeah.
Even stuff like Eminem's 8 Mile, for example.
Yeah.
You might kind of titter away when I mention that in the same bracket, but... if you think of those kind of movies, usually when you ask me that question, what role would Mel have played? I always say, well, this is very easy and boring. It's the titular role. But that kind of genre, this kind of, as to quote Chris Norris again, sometime in the early 90s, our curators of cool inducted Johnny Cash into the proto-gangster pantheon of great American badasses. So he's kind of making a point there. It's a kind of badass, kind of almost hip hop, badass kind of role, and that's not really Gibson, because Gibson's all about reluctant, violent, family man.
Yeah. So are you thinking what I'm
So
thinking?
I don't think he would be playing.
What do you think
Johnny
he'd be
Cash
playing
role
the
here.
dad?
I think a mature Gibson.
Yeah.
Mature Gibson, much as he did in, I believe, is it Daddy's Home or Daddy's Home 2? Daddy's Home 2. I think it's Daddy's Home 2.
I don't know.
I think it's Daddy's Home 2 where he plays the dad. I'm just going to check this.
If we get to 100 episodes, we'll do it on the podcast. I don't care if it's
Daddy's
historical
Home
or not.
2, not a historical movie. Daddy's Home 2, yes.
It's Gibson,
starring Will Ferrell, Mark Wahlberg, Linda Cardellini, John Cena, John Lithgow, and Mel Gibson. Mel Gibson plays the dad of the badass Mark Wahlberg. So I think he'd play. Yeah, I think he'd. And I think Robert Patrick is miscast in this, so that's what he'd probably be.
Because he's too young, do you mean?
Yeah.
Otherwise, I think he's well cast. There's a scene in the middle that I get confused because in one of the I think it's one of the Thanksgiving scenes, his hair is like really grey in the middle of the movie, and then later on it's not grey anymore. I don't know if that's a costume problem, and that's something I noticed.
A continuity error.
Yeah. So Daniel Day-Lewis and Marlon Brando, I don't think any of those are going to be suitable, are they?
Not for the lead role.
Can you imagine Brando as Cash?
Because it's a gothic, complicated,
Man in Black,
troubled role.
Who should do the DVD commentary? Still want to get rid of this question.
Who do you think should do the DVD commentary?
Johnny Cash.
Yeah. Well, maybe the score on First Wife.
Actually, that's a very good point. That's actually because basically this question is who's been wronged historically in this movie.
Get away from my children.
Don't you ever come back near my children.
Don't you ever come near my children.
Don't touch me. Yeah. Best companion films. You mentioned Ray, Jamie Foxx.
Well, it's got to be Walk Hard.
The comedy.
The comedy Walk Hard. What's it? The
Dewey Cox.
The Dewey Cox story.
It's good actually. Yeah,
which is a parody of this movie.
Yeah.
Walk Hard.
Who's the lead again? I can't remember the fella's name.
I'm just gonna look it up now. Sorry, because he's not this. He's very recognisable. Because it's like ugly actor, comic actor, but it's not. So it's 2007.
I'll fill in while you're looking at
the Dewey Cox story, starring John C. Reilly.
Yeah. That's
very
good.
amusing.
There's an Elvis film that came out relatively recently, like 3 years ago. I haven't seen it. Austin Butler plays Elvis because Elvis is in this movie. And there's also another film I haven't seen. You were showing me the poster of Walk Hard.
The Dewey Cox story. Laugh made him tough. Love made him strong. Music made him hard.
Brilliant. That is good. It's rare we do a movie on this podcast that's been like parodied. We actually, I think I'm just thinking off the top of my head. If we get on to doing at some point Platoon, which we should, of course. There's is it Hot Shots? I think.
Yeah, it's and Hot Shots Part 2.
Yeah. So there's also a film I had never heard of before where Jeff Bridges.
That's a Top Gun parody, isn't it?
Oh, is it? Sorry,
yeah.
I'm getting confused there. Jeff Bridges. Stars as a down-and-out country singer seeking redemption. Crazy Heart, 2009.
This isn't a comedy.
No. It's a straight-up film.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, there's quite a look. If you think about the down-and-out country singer redemption, there's that much remade movie, isn't there? What is it? A Star Is Born. I don't know if you've seen any of the versions of that, including the recent Bradley Cooper one. I think it won an Oscar or two. Yeah. Telling that story of drink and... ultimately, I believe suicide in that case, but then in the country music, the country and western genre. Sorry, yes, sir.
Hall of Fame, Bryce. What are we putting in? I've got some picks for this.
I think
very high trousers.
Very high trousers.
Very high trousers.
I think the tractor in which he backflips into the river.
Yep. I've got two other ones for you.
Go on.
Elvis Presley's chili fries.
Chili fries.
I don't know because he's eating when he meets him first. He's eating chili fries. Do you think that's like a little reference to his later obesity and?
I don't know because
not obesity. His diet, I should say, his diet.
Well, the diet wasn't the diet that has to do with the peanut butter and Jello and like an entire loaf of bread,
bacon. Yeah.
So chili fries is very mild compared to that kind of cheeseburgers, that kind of excess.
Yeah.
Unless we forget, Elvis died on the toilet, didn't he?
Like a true king.
Yeah. Is it a nod to that? Perhaps. Is the falcon a nod to the condor? What other missing coda are there? Listeners, if you've seen any, write into us at historicalmoviespodcast at gmail.com.
Correct. I'm glad you brought that up because at the beginning of this movie, there's a reference. There's a crow and a black dog. Two black animals at the beginning.
The man in black.
The man in black.
And the black
wild,
animals.
Yeah, absolutely. Wild like an animal. And that's what I think there's a quote by Chris Christopherson about Johnny Cash saying he was almost like a wild animal in some ways, that kind of spirit. So that's a nice touch in this movie. And my final pick for the Hall of Fame is a nice yellow glass of water from Folsom Prison. Yeah. What would happen in the sequel if there was one? We get the later Johnny Cash years when he joins the Highwaymen with Chris Christopherson, Willie Nelson, and can't remember the fourth man.
And then you get the very, just before he died, he released that brilliant yet highly depressing album with the single.
I cut myself today.
Everything Goes Away in the End. Is it?
9 Inch Nails, I think, is it the original?
Yeah.
Maybe they should make a sequel out of that. I mean, it wouldn't be focusing on his love life per se, I think, because they were the end of this movie says they were happily married then for 35 years afterwards until they died.
And he died very soon after she died.
A couple of years, I think, is it?
Even sooner, I think. He's just, so the implication being is he was genuinely died of a broken heart. I think that's
okay. Yeah. Nobel Prize for movie physics. Just the sink that we've come on. That actually. I also thought that's a poorly plumbed sink when we saw the scene, but actually wasn't planned. He did really rip a sink off the wall. But the ease at which Joaquin Phoenix rips the sink off the wall should be a good testament to the physicality he has.
Is he really strong, Joaquin Phoenix?
I don't know. He's a pretty big boy, isn't he? Big old boy.
Because I've tried to do that on a stag do in Vilnius, and believe me,
the story's coming out now.
Doesn't come off the wall that easily.
Is that the story you told me you had to repair it with a bit of like sellotape or something?
Yeah, we won't go any further.
Have you got anything for? I'll hit you with Pedant's Corner, then you can do Sude's Corner. I've got two. For you.
I've kind of done my Sude's Corner.
Oh, okay. Well, here's Pedant's Corner. Factual error.
Go on.
Towards the beginning of the film, the Cashers receive a notice about their rent. It's the 1950s, and the address has a zip code. Zip codes weren't introduced until 1963.
Ah, for fuck's sake.
Factual error. In the scene of Johnny's first audition, Sam Phillips is sitting at a table telling Johnny he wasn't believable as a God-fearing man. On the table is a packet of cigarettes with a barcode on it. Barcodes weren't in use until 1974.
Fucking hell.
Yeah. So you've done Sude's Corner, Bryce. That just leaves us then with marks out of 10. What did you give? What's your overall thinking of Walk the Line? What did you give it out of 10?
I think this portrayal of the badass Johnny Cash is really sort of multi-layered and tender in parts and sad, and it's the redemption arc. In some ways, a little bit predictable in that way. In some ways, like your man was pointing out there, is able to get away with the mawkish sentimentality because of the realism with a capital R. But I think it's really atmospheric. I love this sort of roadside dust and deep south and sweatiness and alcoholism, and I really, really like it. I've always liked it as a movie. I loved it when it came out. I didn't really think I would. I'm not such a big Johnny Cash fan as you are. I'm not so enamored with. I mean, I like Johnny Cash, the folk singer. I'm not so keen on Johnny Cash, the sort of country and western / pop singer, which I think he became at the Johnny Cash show. And in some ways, I think the June Carter caravan kind of railroaded him in that direction.
Yeah, I can see what you mean.
For worse as well as better. And so I'm not such a big Johnny Cash fan as yourself, but I've always loved this movie. And so on watching it again today, I think I'd give it a good roundy 8, good solid 8 out of 10. It's a good movie.
I agree. I've given an 8.5. I was worried there because often you go, I really enjoyed this movie. I'm going to give it a good solid round 5.5 out of 10. Because of your slightly lower marking, or I always say well calibrated at marks out of 10.
Well, isn't it? We haven't really done this genre before. The musical legend biopic, which is I like them actually. Most of them which I've seen, I like them, and they don't need to be epic per se. In the way that a lot of other movies we've discussed are. They don't have to be bloated and epic.
It's a good point. It's the personal stories, and this is kind of very stripped back. You can see that because we've just done... last movie we did was Master and Commander.
Right, yeah.
Well, I think you were suffering a little bit from being a dad. You were very tired when we did that. But... a really great movie. But the budget for that, here's the compare and contrast. Budget for Master and Commander, 150 million. Budget for this, 28 million. At the box office, it made 189. And my point is that these kind of movies are just a really stripped back. They get to like the essentials. Okay, we want to tell a story of drug abuse, rock and roll, redemption, and it just has that. They don't need to have. In this movie, there's only a few scenes. I'm thinking of the scene when June Carter walks into the place, the hall where they're playing, and they're all like chucking beer bottles at her. Or no, she starts chucking beer bottles at them. And that's when she says, "You can't walk no line."
Yeah.
And that's really like the establishing shot there when you've got like an old Cadillac driving past, and it's like looks like late 50s America. That's the only sort of like wide establishing shot in that movie. And I thought, you don't need to have all these like massively expensive thousands of extras shots in these movies when they're stripped back and they focus on a personal story. This is a personal story with two people, and that's why I've given it a high score, 8.5, because it works brilliantly well on that, and it doesn't try to get more complicated than that. It doesn't try to preach too much. It's just telling that very simple story. Yep. Kind of, it reminds me a lot of ways of Clint Eastwood stories. Where he's made some shite films, but he's made some great films where it's all very simplified and you're just very focused on one particular aspect, especially when he's been directing them. And that's that kind of style. And it's great. Really enjoyed it.
At the same time, I have to say it's a very well-trodden, very familiar, the redemption arc narrative. There's nothing terribly revolutionary really about this movie. And I think it's quite simple in many ways.
Yeah, it is.
But because it's so simple, it's quite sort of heartfelt, I think, at times.
Yeah, it's like a clarity to it, isn't there? Yeah. We mentioned, just again, Master and Commander almost has too many ideas, maybe. I mean, it makes it a brilliant film, but a lot of them aren't explored fully, and you think that could do with a bit more exploration.
Too many nods to what's going on, perhaps, with the botany, the war, the masculinity, etc. Whereas this is a much more sort of simplified, as you said, stripped down kind of piece, which perhaps this genre lends itself to. And I hope that we do more of these sort of musical biopics, in terms of...
Yeah, we've got Ray, we've got Elvis. There's a Queen movie. That's a sneer. If you won't be able to see that on the audio. But yeah, there we go. So thanks for joining me, Bryce. A pleasure. Great movie. If you're watching this movie or listening to this podcast, I should say, on YouTube, leave us a comment. Get in contact with us at the email address that Bryce remembered earlier, which I've now forgotten again, because we love to hear what you say. Thanks very much for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode of the Historical Movies Podcast. That's it for this episode of the Historical Movies Podcast. Don't forget to leave us a review on your chosen podcast platform. Spotify and Apple Podcasts make a huge difference to the algorithm. And if you're on YouTube, don't forget to leave a comment or a like or subscribe. Thanks very much for listening. We'll see you in the next episode.